The Unseen Barrier, Chapter 1. Marcus had always dreamed of becoming a police officer. Growing up in a neighborhood plagued by crime and violence, he had witnessed firsthand the impact of law enforcement, or the lack thereof, on his community. He remembered the nights when sirens wailed in the distance, the shadows of police cars flickering against the walls of his childhood home. Those moments ignited a fire within him, a desire to be a force for good, to protect and serve the people who needed it most. After years of hard work, late nights studying, and pushing through the challenges of a rigorous training academy, Marcus finally achieved his goal. He donned the crisp blue uniform of the local police department, the badge gleaming on his chest like a promise. It was a moment of triumph, a culmination of dreams that had once felt so distant. Yet, as he stepped into the precinct for the first time, a sense of unease washed over him. The precinct was bustling with activity, officers moving about with purpose, their voices blending into a cacophony of urgency. But as Marcus entered, he felt the weight of unspoken barriers pressing down on him. The atmosphere shifted slightly, and he could sense the glances directed his way, some curious, others skeptical. Most of his colleagues were white, and he quickly realized that he was one of the few black officers in the department. During roll calls, Marcus observed the dynamics at play. His colleagues would often engage in light-hearted banter, sharing inside jokes that left him feeling like an outsider. They would laugh and clap each other on the back, while he stood to the side, a polite smile plastered on his face, trying to fit into a world that felt foreign. The camaraderie that seemed to come so easily to them was a barrier he couldn't seem to breach. As the weeks turned into months, Marcus found himself grappling with the reality of his situation. He was dedicated to his work, pouring his heart into every assignment, but he couldn't shake the feeling that his efforts were often overlooked. When it came time for promotions, he watched in disbelief as less qualified officers were elevated over him, their skin color seemingly more important than their competence. It was a bitter pill to swallow, and each instance chipped away at his resolve. Despite the challenges, Marcus remained committed to his role. He believed in the mission of the police department and wanted to make a difference in the community he loved. He poured himself into community outreach programs, hoping to bridge the gap between the police and the neighborhoods they served. He organized events, participated in town hall meetings, and worked tirelessly to foster trust between the police and the residents. Yet, even in these efforts, he faced resistance. His ideas were often dismissed, and he felt the sting of being seen as an outsider in a profession he had dedicated his life to. As he navigated the complexities of his role, Marcus began to realize that the barriers he faced were not just personal but systemic. The culture within the department was steeped in tradition, and change felt like an uphill battle. He often found himself questioning whether he could truly make a difference in an environment that seemed resistant to progress. But Marcus was not one to back down easily. He had always been a fighter, and he knew that the only way to create change was to confront the issues head-on. He decided to speak out, joining a group of officers advocating for diversity and inclusion within the department. Together, they aimed to challenge the status quo, hoping to create a more equitable environment for future generations of officers. As he stood in front of the mirror that morning, adjusting his uniform, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was determined to break down the unseen barriers that had held him back and to pave the way for others who would follow in his footsteps. The journey ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to face it head-on, armed with the knowledge that change was possible, even in the face of adversity. The Unseen Barrier, Chapter 2. The following week, Marcus attended his first meeting with the Diversity and Inclusion Group. The room was small, tucked away in a corner of the precinct, and the atmosphere was charged with a mix of hope and apprehension. As he entered, he was greeted by a handful of fellow officers, each representing different backgrounds and experiences. Some were veterans of the force, while others were newcomers like Marcus, eager to make their voices heard. The group was led by Officer Ramirez, a seasoned officer with a reputation for being outspoken about the need for change within the department. She had been a mentor to many, advocating for a more inclusive environment for years. As she began the meeting, her passion was palpable. "We're here because we believe in a better future for our department," she said, her voice steady and resolute. "We need to address the systemic issues that have plagued us for too long." Marcus listened intently as she outlined the group's goals: to raise awareness about racial bias, to implement training programs, and to create a mentorship system for officers from underrepresented communities. It was a vision that resonated deeply with him, and he felt a surge of excitement at the prospect of being part of something larger than himself. As the discussion progressed, Marcus found himself sharing his own experiences. He spoke about the challenges he faced as a black officer, the feeling of isolation, and the frustration of being overlooked for promotions. His voice trembled slightly, but he pressed on, fueled by the support of his peers. "I want to be a part of the change," he said, his determination shining through. "I want to ensure that future officers don't have to go through what I did." The room erupted in applause, and Marcus felt a wave of validation wash over him. For the first time, he was surrounded by individuals who understood his struggles and shared his vision for a more equitable department. They brainstormed ideas, discussing ways to engage with the community and to hold the department accountable for its actions. It was a collaborative effort, and Marcus felt a sense of camaraderie that had eluded him since he joined the force. However, as the weeks went by, Marcus began to notice the challenges of implementing change within the department. While the diversity group was gaining momentum, there were still many who resisted the idea of reform. Some colleagues dismissed their efforts as unnecessary, insisting that the department was already doing enough. Others were openly hostile, viewing the group as a threat to the status quo. One afternoon, during a routine shift, Marcus found himself in a tense situation. He and his partner, Officer Jenkins, were called to respond to a domestic disturbance. As they arrived on the scene, Marcus noticed that the suspect was a young black man, visibly agitated and distressed. He could feel the tension in the air, and he instinctively knew that this was a moment where his training and values would be put to the test. As they approached the suspect, Marcus tried to engage him calmly, using de-escalation techniques he had learned in training. However, Officer Jenkins, who had been with the department for years, took a different approach. He raised his voice, demanding compliance, and the situation quickly escalated. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he watched his partner's actions unfold. "Jenkins, wait," Marcus called out, stepping forward in an attempt to intervene. "Let's talk to him. He's scared, not a threat." But Jenkins dismissed him, insisting that they needed to assert control. The young man's fear turned to anger, and Marcus could see the situation spiraling out of control. In that moment, Marcus felt the weight of his dual identity as both a police officer and a black man. He understood the implications of their actions, the potential for violence, and the impact it would have on the community they served. He took a deep breath, grounding himself in the principles he had fought so hard to uphold. "Jenkins, we're here to help," Marcus said firmly, stepping between his partner and the suspect. "Let's give him space to breathe." He turned to the young man, his voice steady and calm. "I'm Officer Marcus. We're not here to hurt you. Can you tell me what's going on?" As he spoke, he could see the tension in the young man's shoulders begin to ease. The fear in his eyes softened, and for a moment, the chaos around them faded away. Marcus felt a sense of relief wash over him as he realized that he was making a difference, even in a small way. After the situation was resolved, Marcus confronted Jenkins about his approach. "We can't treat people like that," he said, his voice firm but respectful. "We need to build trust, not fear." Jenkins shrugged it off, dismissing Marcus's concerns as overly sensitive. The conversation left Marcus feeling frustrated and disheartened, but he knew that he had to keep pushing for change, even when it felt. The Unseen Barrier, Chapter 3. As the weeks turned into months, Marcus found himself increasingly at odds with the culture within the department. The incident with Officer Jenkins had been a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the deep-seated biases that still existed among his colleagues. While he was committed to advocating for change, he often felt like a lone voice in a sea of indifference. Despite the challenges, Marcus continued to engage with the Diversity and Inclusion Group, which had begun to gain traction within the precinct. They organized workshops on racial bias and community relations, inviting speakers from various backgrounds to share their experiences. The response from some officers was encouraging, but others remained resistant, viewing the initiative as unnecessary or even threatening. One afternoon, as Marcus prepared for a community outreach event, he received a call from Officer Ramirez. "Marcus, we need you to speak at the town hall meeting tonight," she said, her voice urgent. "There's been a lot of pushback against our programs, and we need someone to share their story." Marcus hesitated, feeling the weight of the request. Speaking publicly about his experiences was daunting, but he understood the importance of representation. "Okay, I'll do it," he replied, steeling himself for the challenge ahead. That evening, The town hall was packed with community members and officers alike. As Marcus took the stage, he felt a mix of nerves and determination. He looked out at the audience, seeing familiar faces from the precinct and members of the community he had worked so hard to connect with. "Thank you for having me," he began, his voice steady. "I want to share my journey as a black officer in this department. It hasn't been easy, and I know I'm not alone in my struggles." He spoke candidly about the discrimination he faced, the feeling of being an outsider, and the challenges of navigating a system that often felt stacked against him. As he shared his story, he could see the reactions of those in the audience. Some nodded in understanding, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. He emphasized the importance of empathy and understanding, urging his colleagues to recognize the impact of their actions on the community they served. "We have a responsibility to build trust, to be allies, and to create a department that reflects the diversity of the community," he said passionately. After his speech, Marcus felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had spoken his truth, and while he knew there would be backlash, he also felt a glimmer of hope. The conversations that followed were encouraging, with many officers expressing their support for the diversity initiatives. However, he also overheard whispers of dissent, with some colleagues questioning his motives and labeling him as a troublemaker. The following week, Marcus faced the consequences of his decision to speak out. During a routine shift, he overheard a group of officers discussing the town hall meeting. "Did you hear Marcus? He thinks he's some kind of hero," one officer scoffed. "He's just trying to stir the pot." Marcus felt a pang of disappointment, but he refused to let it deter him. He knew that change wouldn't happen overnight, and he was prepared to face the challenges ahead. He continued to engage with the diversity group, working tirelessly to implement training programs and foster dialogue within the department. One day, as he was preparing for another community outreach event, he received an unexpected visit from Chief Anderson, the head of the department. The chief was known for his no-nonsense approach and had a reputation for being tough but fair. "Marcus, I wanted to talk to you about your recent efforts," he said, his tone serious. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "Yes, sir. I hope it's positive feedback," he replied cautiously. Chief Anderson leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus for a moment. "I appreciate your passion and dedication to improving our department. However, I need you to understand that change takes time. Not everyone is on board with your ideas, and you need to be prepared for resistance." Marcus nodded, understanding the reality of the situation. "I know, Chief. But I believe it's necessary. We can't ignore the issues that exist within our department. We need to do better." The chief sighed, rubbing his temples. "I agree, but you need to be strategic. You can't alienate your colleagues. You need to find a way to bring them along with you." As the conversation continued, Marcus felt a mix of frustration and determination. He understood the chief's perspective, but he also knew that waiting for change to happen organically was not an option. "I appreciate your advice, Chief, but I can't stand by and watch as my colleagues continue to perpetuate a culture of bias. We need to take action now." The chief regarded him with a mixture of respect and concern. "I admire your conviction, Marcus. Just remember, you're not alone in this. There are others who share your vision." The Unseen Barrier, Chapter 4. As the days turned into weeks, Marcus continued to face resistance from some of his colleagues. Despite the challenges, he remained committed to his mission, working tirelessly to implement training programs and foster dialogue within the department. One afternoon, as he was preparing for a community outreach event, he received a visit from Officer Thompson, a veteran officer who had been with the department for over 20 years. Thompson was known for his old-school approach, and Marcus had often clashed with him over issues of racial bias and community relations. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about something," Thompson said, his voice gruff. "I know you're trying to make a difference, but you're going about it the wrong way. You're alienating your colleagues, and you're not going to get anywhere with your approach." Marcus felt a surge of frustration, but he took a deep breath and tried to remain calm. "What do you mean, Thompson? I'm just trying to do what's right." Thompson shook his head. "You're not listening to me, Marcus. You're not hearing what I'm saying. You're so focused on your own agenda that you're not considering the impact on others." Marcus felt a pang of doubt, wondering if he was indeed being too narrow-minded. But as he looked at Thompson, he saw the same old biases and prejudices that had been holding the department back for so long. "I understand what you're saying, Thompson," Marcus said, his voice firm. "But I have to do what I believe is right. I have to stand up for what I know is just." Thompson snorted. "You're just a young, idealistic officer, Marcus. You don't know how the world works. You don't know how to get things done." Marcus felt a surge of anger, but he bit back his response. He knew that Thompson was trying to provoke him, to get him to react impulsively. But Marcus was determined to stay calm, to stay focused on his mission. "I understand that we may have different perspectives, Thompson," Marcus said, his voice even. "But I'm not going to back down. I'm going to keep fighting for what I believe in, no matter what." Thompson shook his head and walked away, leaving Marcus feeling frustrated but determined. He knew that he had a long way to go, but he was willing to do whatever it took to make a difference. As the days turned into weeks, Marcus continued to face challenges and setbacks. But he refused to give up, using each obstacle as an opportunity to learn and grow. And slowly but surely, he began to see progress, to see the department begin to change. One day, as he was walking through the precinct, he saw a group of officers gathered around a table, engaged in a heated discussion. Marcus approached them cautiously, wondering what was going on. As he listened to their conversation, he realized that they were discussing the very issues he had been trying to address. They were talking about racial bias, about community relations, and about the need for change. Marcus felt a surge of hope, wondering if maybe, just maybe, he was starting to make a difference. He joined the conversation, sharing his thoughts and ideas, and was surprised to find that the other officers were receptive, even enthusiastic. For the first time in a long time, Marcus felt a sense of optimism, a sense that maybe, just maybe, he was on the right track. He knew that there was still a long way to go, but he was determined to keep pushing forward, to keep fighting for what he believed in. As he walked away from the conversation, Marcus felt a sense of pride and purpose. He knew that he was making a difference, no matter how small. And he knew that he would continue to fight for what was right, no matter what obstacles lay ahead.